Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen, welcome back to Sunday morning in the old cookbook show. Today we're going to do another recipe out of a compilation of cottage cookery recipes. This is from the Northern Counties School of Cookery and Household Economy, Newcastle on Tyne. This is from 1899. I have a copy of this book, again from it's undated, 1920s, 1930s, I think, just based on the publishing. The recipe is in both of these books. And it's part of a series that had 3 levels of cooking, sort of an upstairs, downstairs, classic English classist type thing. Cottage cookery being the lowest one, household cookery, which I have here, which is sort of the mid-level, and then high-class cookery. I haven't been able to find the entire sequence of books. I'm still on the lookout to get a physical copy of high-class cooking, which is kind of funny because I have a dozen books in my collection called high-class cooking or high-class cookery, all from the UK. Anyway, so today we're going to do something called Cornish Pasties. And I find this to be a very fascinating recipe. This cookbook is, I would say, and the cooking is fairly simplistic. The cooking is straightforward. There's no frills, there's no bells and whistles, solid recipes in this book. And a lot of them are very tiny. And so this recipe uses 1 ounce of meat and 1 ounce of potato. And I can't imagine that you're going down to the butcher shop and you're buying 1 ounce of meat to make this. I have to imagine that the housekeeper, the homemaker, would be making another recipe from the front of this book, one of the beef stews or soups or something like that, and cut off just this tiny little bit of meat in order to make these for lunches. Or maybe you were going down to the butcher and buying 1 ounce of meat. That may have been a full stretch on your budget. Not unlike it is today to buy meat. So the first thing we needed to do is make the pastry. So in here I've got some flour. To that I'm adding salt and baking powder. And it says to add some fat. It doesn't specify, so I'm going to use butter, although it could have been possibly pork or beef fat. Okay, so I got ahead of myself. I should have started with the filling. I'll get a little bowl. Don't need a very big one. There's not many ingredients. So into this bowl, I'm going to put 1 ounce of raw beef, chopped fine. 1 ounce of raw potato, chopped fine. Half a teaspoon of minced onion. Next in, I just want to make sure I got the measurement right. 1 saltspoon of salt. And 1/4 saltspoon of pepper. So a saltspoon is 1/4 of a teaspoon. So now you figure 1/4 of a teaspoon, 1/4 of 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. There's really not much in this. And then it says just a little bit of water, splash of water, and mix it all together, I guess to get the salt and pepper everywhere. This is enough filling for 4 pies, so I can't imagine the pies are very big either. There we go. So I'm going to set that aside. Now back to our pie dough. I now need to put in just a little bit of water until this comes together as a ball. So you put that on full whack, and I'm thinking maybe 2 tablespoons of water. There we go. I kind of like that this recipe is a smaller, more manageable size. So, very tiny little ball of dough here. So put a little bit of flour out on the bench. Get our dough ball out. Now, the idea is that I need to divide this into 4, 1 for each pie. So we'll roll this out round-ish. I should check and see. I should check the recipe. See if it gives a thickness. Just says roll it into 4 rounds. So I'm never going to win any awards for round, but I suppose if I did this week in, week out for most of my life, they would be a lot rounder than that, but that's good enough. Okay. Now, when you're rolling pastry dough like this, or any pie dough or something like that, don't over flour your board. You want flour on your board because you don't want it to stick, but at the same time, you want it to stick. Does that make sense? Because if there's too much flour on the board, you're going to change the consistency of the dough, but also there's not going to be any resistance, and it might, every time you roll it out, it'll snap back. If it sort of just grips the board a little bit, it won't snap back as quickly. Now, we divide our tiny little bit of filling between the 4 of them. I fear I may have rolled them too thin. We'll see. Do a spoonful on each and then go back. Now, wet around the edges, fold them over and form a frill. I fear that my frill folding technique is lacking. I've never folded a frill before, so let's see what happens. Over, pinch closed. Now, there's nothing in this recipe about an egg wash. I did notice in one of the other cookbooks that has a recipe for Cornish pasties that what was the way it was worded? If there was a broken egg in the kitchen, brush a little on. So they weren't advocating even in that book that you break an egg in order to do an egg wash. It's just, if you had one and it was already broken, maybe brush some on. So I'm not going to do any egg wash. It does tell me to prick them, so I will prick them. The oven is preheated, 350 degrees. And we'll get these in, get them baked, and see what happens.
Ooh, hey Glenn, those look good. Hey friends. Oh, let me close that for you. Is that oh,
That's not for now.
that's not for now. Ah, yes, we have another treat.
Sausage rolls with puff pastry that we made.
That looks really good.
These are from an 1899 recipe for Cornish pasties.
Oh, yes.
Or pasties.
Whatever leftovers you have, you put them in there, an instant traveling meal.
Kind of, but not really. I guess, maybe?
Well, because that's not what you did. You didn't
No.
put leftovers in there, but you
No,
could.
you could. It definitely could be leftovers. Well, and I like this recipe because at the bottom it says, any mixture of meat or vegetables may be used for these. Pork, onion, and sage being a favorite combination.
So any leftovers?
Any leftovers, I guess, yes. Anything could go in these, but this one was a little more prescriptive. They're tiny.
Well, they're very, this one looks this one.
Well, it's puffed up. There's nothing
okay.
inside that one.
Okay,
So
it
there's
just-
so little filling.
Okay.
But let's give it a go.
All right, do you want to cut one or?
Let's cut one in
Okay,
half.
I was going to say. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, no, not very much filling at all.
Not much filling at all.
I like it though.
Tasty filling.
We could just overfill it.
So, I think for today's taste, four times as much filling as what I actually made with this. But otherwise, it's really good. Now, it could use an egg wash on the top. Definitely an egg wash on the top would have given you better color and a little bit better crust. But this is really good. And I can see how this would be that lunch that you would take with you.
It would travel well because it's not as much as I'm making a complete mess. It's not flaking and falling apart in the way that would be bad if you were trying to travel with it.
Okay, so I'm just going to keep eating. This is a great starting place. Maybe a little more stuff.
Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.